Welcome to the Scottish Basketball Podcast. We post weekly episodes on the senior game in Scotland. You can join for free on Patreon, Spotify, and YouTube to receive a notification when new episodes are released. Access to the podcast episodes will always be free. You can make a contribution for yourself or for someone else as a gift through membership on Patreon. However small and infrequent, any contribution is very helpful and very much appreciated. You can get in touch with the podcast by sending us a message on Instagram or an email. If you like the content, share and send it to a friend who you think would like it too. I'm delighted to welcome Stuart to the podcast. Hi, Stuart.
Hi. Hi.
In 1961, a handful of FP rugby players from Boroughmuir High School decided that basketball might sharpen them up for the winter months. Within 6 years, the Boroughmuir Basketball Club had won the Scottish National Championship. Competitive club basketball was still in its relative infancy in Scotland, organised on a regional east-west basis. The National League itself would not be established until 1969. With their national championship title, Bill McInnes, the club's secretary, driving force, and probably the finest player on the roster, possibly in the country at the time, had the option to enter the team into the FIBA European Champions Cup, the top-tier continental competition of the day and precursor to today's Euroleague. He could have politely refused to enter like all other Scottish teams before, due to the costs involved. Bill decided, however, that they were going to be the first Scottish team to compete at Europe's highest stage. Stuart, when Bill entered the club into the European Cup, how did that process unfold for the team? Did you have a sense of what you were getting yourselves into, and what did you know about European club basketball at that time?
We knew, in actual fact, we knew very little about the standard. We knew it was far higher standard than that we were playing at. But Bill was always open for a challenge. And along with the then captain, John Tunner, right, they thought, yeah, we'll do it. We had done a few other things, not on the basketball front, but one of the things that the main problem that people were saying was, how are we going to fund this venture? How are we going to fund the venture? Where are we going to play? Right? What's a suitable venue? And how do we fund it? We were amateurs. We were all former pupils of Boroughmuir, plus 3 actual pupils of Boroughmuir at the time that we were going to play the game in 1967. We had some experience in fundraising. And again, Bill and John don't do things by half measures. Okay. We funded our games by having the most popular bands playing at our dances in the Pally in Fountain Bridge, Edinburgh. Okay. And one of these was the Mersey Beats. You're too young to even know who the Mersey Beats were, but the Mersey Beats. And we also had, one time we had Manfred Mann. And on the day that they were at our dance in Edinburgh, they were also the #1 in the charts in the UK. So, no, we didn't do things by half measures.
The draw itself was magnificent or unkind, depending on your sporting outlook. Boroughmuir were matched up against Real Madrid, the reigning European champions, a team stacked with elite professional players and coached by Pedro Ferrandez, the legendary Madrid coach who would one day be inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Among their playing numbers at that time were Clifford Luke, the American-born forward, later named one of FIBA's greatest 50 ever players, and Wayne Brabender, who would retire as Real Madrid's second highest scorer of all time. Boroughmuir, by contrast, as Stuart mentioned, were an amateur team of schoolboys and former pupils. Not one of them was over the age of 22, and their average age was 20. Stuart, did the enormity of the match ever faze you, or was youthful exuberance a useful distraction?
Totally naive, right? Totally no idea what they were going to look like, and it didn't really matter. It was an adventure, right? It was something that we were going to do. And I'll also point out that none of the players were over 6'3" in our team. Okay. And also you had on the Real Madrid team, there was a third American that played, and that was Miles Aitken. And Miles Aitken was one of the best players in Europe and played in Italy. And in 1974, he became the Great Britain coach. And Miles was a fantastic coach, and a brilliant player. And the reason that they could get 3 foreign players in their team, the normal was only allowed to have 2, was that Brabander was married to a Spanish girl. Therefore, he qualified as being Spanish as opposed to American. So we were up against it. But no, it was an adventure. It was working, and we enjoyed ourselves.
The first leg of the 2-leg aggregate first round match was played at Murrayfield Ice Rink on the morning of Sunday the 29th of October 1967. It was the only venue in Edinburgh large enough. Adults paid 5 shillings at the door, school children half a crown. Army volunteers had laid a wooden floor over the ice, and a tennis match had been cleared off the court barely an hour before tip-off. People from all over the country had packed in to watch this spectacle.
And that was a problem. The other issue was finding a venue, finding somewhere. And Bill, I must admit, did rely on the cooperation of the Basketball Association at the time, which is virtually 3 people in the Basketball Association, but we got help. And what we did, or Bill did most of it, he organised that we hire Murrayfield Ice Rink. The only time we could get Murrayfield Ice Rink at a suitable time was a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. So we had organised that, and we organised the army, territorial army, to come in and lay a floor on the ice. They came in on the Sunday morning, laid the floor on the ice, set the baskets up, and then we were ready to play. And we played the game. I think there were about 3,000 spectators, but Murrayfield Ice Rink was the only place that could hold these numbers for the game. The game took place. Obviously, we were delighted it took place. However, to put it in perspective, but by the time the game finished and we were all organised and going home, the skaters were back on the ice rink, right? Also, and the Murrayfield Ice Rink people were delighted because they didn't lose much money from not having the skaters on.
In the weeks and days before that first leg, was there any attempt to prepare specifically for Real Madrid? Did you have any scouting on them? What did scouting look like in 1967, and what offensive and defensive tactics do you remember Boroughmuir playing at that time?
Okay, as far as scouting was concerned, we didn't know. There was no videos. There was no TV saying, "Look, let's have a look at this team." No, we knew that they were the European champions. They were going to be good. Our style of play was fast break, jump shooting. Play really fast basketball. We were small. That's always the other thing you have to take into account. We didn't have a coach, right? We just coached ourselves. There was no coach involved. Now, we did have our PE teacher, Gary Taylor, who was the responsible adult. Did no coaching for us. He was only there because. So that was an element that you don't take into account. No coach, nothing. As far as the tactics were concerned, one tactic only. They were bigger than us. We had to play a zone for the whole game. No point in playing man to man. Played the zone, right? As I said, fast break, set the ball up, see what we can get. We were fast. We're relatively small, but we were fast. And unlike today's game, where the players seem to run very fast, right? We used to run very fast, but the ball went faster, right? So we passed that ball far more than anybody else, right? And that was the way we got the ball down the court. We didn't have a guy dribbling the ball up the court as we have in recent games that I've seen. one guy dribbling all the way up. No, pass the ball. There's a teammate there. So there's a tactic from 1967 that could be employed today, I think.
Very good. What do you remember about walking into the ice rink that Sunday morning? What was it like as a venue for a basketball match? And what do you remember of the changing rooms, the wooden floor you mentioned over the ice, and as the crowd started to build in the building?
Well, again, we just took it in our stride. There was a number of photographs taken of us in the changing room, and a number as a team on the ice. But other than that, no, we're here. We're ready to play. We'll play. No, little or no nerves. No, that was it.
During the warm-up, when you first saw the Real Madrid players up close, what struck you most? Did any of the individual players stand out above the others? Was it their size, their movement, the way they handled the ball, or was it something else?
We really didn't. I personally didn't really look at them at all in the warm-up. No, we knew what we were going to get. They were going to be good. The only challenge, the only thing that happened was when the game started. Yes, you then had to play, right? And there are one or two photographs that you'll see where we're defending, and you can see the zone defence, and you can see Miles Aitken and Cliff Luke, just passing the ball. That's what we did.
The game got underway. Real Madrid led 55-23 at the half and ran out winners in that first leg 108-69. Clifford Luke scored 26. For context, Bill McInnes put up 21, and a young Stuart Capaldi added 16. Boroughmuir had not come simply to make up the numbers. Stuart, you added 16 points in that first leg against the European champions. Can you talk me through how you found your scores? Were there particular things that worked well against them, or were there moments in that game that stood out for you?
Well, as I've said before, it's a team, right? We moved the ball about. That was the basic of it. And I still hold this thing that you need to do nowadays is that you pass this ball about. What you're looking for is really quite simple. You're looking for an uncontested shot at the basket. Now, I was lucky enough to get 8 uncontested shots that I put in. No, I can't recall whether there were layups, but there would be either layups or jump shots, one or other. There was no 3-point line, remember, so there was no shooting from outside. Well, there was shooting from outside, but you weren't going to gain an extra point for that. So I find it. I was lucky. I could put the ball away if there's nobody marking me, like any of the team. We could do that. It just fell to me. Another game, it would fall to another colleague, right? The ball, no, you would just move that ball about. If somebody thought, well, I'll mark this guy because he's a good shooter, we had another 4 good shooters in our team. So the ball would just go to the free man. Once the free man got the ball, we were shooting. That was it. No, really quite simple.
As the game played out, it was obviously a comfortable enough defeat. How did the team manage the sort of flow of the game? Do you remember what was said at the timeouts, at halftime, and what was the mood in the dressing room like after the game?
Well, I find it difficult to remember what during the game itself, but we were pretty positive about it, right? We knew what we were up against. As you said, as long as we've scored a reasonable amount of points, then we've done well, right? There's never any chance of a win with them, but that was it. Then we started to look forward to see, well, we'll see what happens in Madrid.
A fortnight later, the team travelled to Madrid for that return leg, broadcast live on Spanish television. The trip cost an estimated £800, somewhere north of 16,000 in today's money, much of it funded from the players' own pockets, and a small contribution for the Milk Marketing Board. That trip to Madrid in 1967 must have been quite something for a group of young lads from Edinburgh. What do you remember of the journey to get there, the arrival at the airport in Madrid, and seeing the arena set up for the first time?
Okay, right. Well, as far as I recall, that was my first ever flight. Right, so that was when we flew to London. There was no direct flights from what was the old Edinburgh Airport, Turnhouse Airport. We flew to London, then transferred from London to Madrid. We stayed in again, experience for 12 guys who, no, Bill would be 22, and then Dave Patterson and Jimmy Carmichael were still at school, and we stayed in this hotel, waiter service, you name it. So we thought this was absolutely fantastic. We also went round the San Bernabeu Stadium, and I don't know if you realise that Real Madrid is a community team and has several sports. They don't just play football, right? They have a volleyball team. They have a tennis team, right? Okay. They obviously have a basketball team. They have gymnastic team and all these facilities. So we were taking around all these facilities, which were fantastic. One of my recall with Dave Shaw was after the game had finished and we'd had the reception, etc. We snuck out onto the Bernabeu pitch and stood in the middle, stood in the centre circle. No, that was, but of course the basketball was carried out in the tennis arena, the Real Madrid tennis arena, and we arrived sharpish for the game, and we went into the seating area, knowing that we were early for the game. And there was a Davis Cup tennis match on, and we sat and watched that. But what fascinated us was the fact that the only markings on the floor were the tennis markings. And we were waiting and waiting and waiting now to see what was going to happen. The tennis match eventually finished. As soon as the tennis match finished, about 50 young lads came on and ripped up the tennis lines, the white tennis lines, and then they went along and whipped up these brown lines, which were made of plastic, to reveal the basketball court. They just came in, and there was about within 15 minutes, the basketball court was available to us, and we went in. And of course, as per what you were saying earlier on, there was the incident where the ball got stuck, and we found it a wee bit difficult to get the ball stuck from under the basket. But we got some assistance from one of the Real Madrid players. Again, I'll reiterate that our tallest player, Bill, was only 6'3". That was a problem that we had at the time.
As you mentioned there, that famous effort to remove the lodged ball, each failed attempt drawing a louder and louder cheer from the crowd. You must have been interested to see what was coming next. Obviously, the result in the second leg was heavier. You lost 1-2-6-43.
Yes.
The scoreline hardly mattered. Bill scored 14 in this game. Tony Wilson added 10. The boys from Boroughmuir had stood on the same court as the best club side in Europe and competed as best they could.
Real Madrid went on to defend their European title that season, defeating Spartak Brno 98-95 in the final at Lyon. They were without question the finest team on the continent. And Boroughmuir were not, but they were there, and that was the point. For the first time, a men's club team from Scotland had walked onto the European stage just 6 years after picking up a basketball for the first time.
Stuart, when you're looking back at this now, nearly 60 years later, what did that experience mean to you and the boys in that team? Did it change the way you thought about the game and what was possible?
Oh, it was fantastic. It really was the groundwork for the team to go ahead, and encouraged us to go into other European competitions. And we did reasonably well in them. I think we played in one of the competitions. We have the highest aggregate score ever against Racing Mechelen. In the next competition, we have the first time that a Scottish club, possibly a British club, had won European Championship first round leg against the Icelandic team, and then not only did we win that game away from home, we won the home leg as well. So all that, builds up, and we get better and better all the time. We played Juventus Badalona twice during the season, and again we got better and we got better. Still the same style of play though, and that's it. And again, what we were used to doing, and I don't know if anybody realizes that we played technically in America every Tuesday and every Thursday, right, from 1965, because we were a member of the league at the American Air Force Base at Newton. And we went out and played American rules, right? And that got us really, really on it. That's where I learned to do a jump shot. I just watched the base players. Now the base team was better than the wee league team that we played against. The base team were really good top players, and they played in USAF, United States Armed Forces Europe competition, and they were fantastic players. And I used to watch a point guard, and I just sat and watched him jump shot from the elbow of the net. Just watched him, and then went away and copied what he did. So that was the grounding we had, and we were confident we could play. And as I said before, our main style of play was fast break, but that was the ball fast breaking, not just the players running. And of course, we won 10 Scottish Cups. I think we won 9 championships. We won British championships as well, I think a couple. And certainly from my viewpoint on the representative games, I playing for Scotland. I won the 4 countries international tournament, senior tournament, at least 3 times. I had won on the age group under 20, won 4 countries international tournament as well. And of course, the one thing that you were doing when you were winning 4 countries international tournaments was we were beating England, right? So it's extremely good to have a feather in your cap that says, yes, we competed. We did get beat occasionally by England, but we were on a par with them. And again, after the championship, we had 5 Bernabeu players in the Scotland team. That was myself, Tony Wilson, Bill McInnes, John Tunner, and Brian Carmichael. And we played in Oldenburg in Germany in a European country championship. And that was the first time. So all these things build up. And the more and more you play, the better and better you get. And we really did play a lot of games. No, we played a lot of games. We played, and again, we played in lots of tournaments, especially Irish tournaments. But there was always weekend tournaments where we honed our skills. It's great to have a weekend tournament where you play on the Friday night, you play the Saturday morning, you play Saturday afternoon. If you get through to the finals, you're there Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and you learn so much as opposed to playing weekly where you've forgotten the mistakes you made in last week's game and when it comes to theirs. Whereas because of the short time between, you can sort out in a tournament, we made that mistake this morning, let's not make it this afternoon. So these were advantages that we took care of.
Stuart, thank you very, very much for your time. That was a pleasure talking to you about that experience, and hope to get you back on and talk about many more of those stories that you mentioned there another time.
Good. Thanks very much. I hope I've remembered everything. Okay. Thanks a lot.